I'm Bill Gurley. I got to Silicon Valley in about 1997 and was fortunate enough to become a venture capitalist in 98. And the entire first year of my career, I had zero interest in interacting with any form of government. Until one day where I ran into an issue, which I'll tell you about later, that required me to understand what was going on in Washington. So I checked in with a few advisors. They introduced me to this lawyer in DC. He calls me back. He says, Bill, I got exactly what you need. I found a congressman on the committee that matters to what you're talking about, and I can set up a meeting. I go, great, I'll fly out. He goes, no, don't fly out. He's coming to you. I go, he's coming to me? That's pretty nice. He said, I need you to get some people together, and here's the catch. They need to bring $5,000 each. Started thinking, all right, I got 6 people. We got board members, CEO, $5,000, $30,000. He called me back next week. He goes, most of these meetings have 10 to 12 people. I said, shit. Like now I'm inviting people that don't even have anything to do with this thing and like having to help them out. I'm up to 60K, I hang up. He called me back a week later. I go, oh shit, I got 12 people. You know, everybody's got a check. We're ready to go. I'm losing interest at this point. He goes, do they have spouses? Let's have their spouses write $5,000 each. I go, our conference room's not big enough for the spouses. He goes, they don't have to come. True story. And it would go on to happen 2 more times in my life, and then I stopped meeting with congressmen. The reason that I needed to engage relates to this company. My 4th VC investment was in a company called Tropos Networks. We had industrial-grade mesh Wi-Fi. You could mount it on a telephone pole and bathe the city in Wi-Fi, broadband. Google got excited about it. Earthlink got excited about it. But the customer I loved the most that got excited about it were mayors. There are hundreds of mayors all over the country that wanted to provide free Wi-Fi service across their downtown area. It would help with public safety, economic development, and of course, digital divide. We were so thrilled. I was so pumped. I was sure we had a winner here. And then one day, these 2 people got excited, which turned out not to be a good thing. This is Mayor Street of Philadelphia and his CIO, Diana Neff. They got just as excited as I did, because the next thing that happened is what caused me to get that meeting. Lobbyists tried to kill Philly wireless plan. And in the article it says, Philly's plan to offer an inexpensive wireless internet service, the most ambitious yet, collided with commercial interest. There were no voters or citizens up in arms about this. Commercial interest. Imagine how surprised I was when I read this. Philadelphia was embarking on the research phase of the project when Verizon successfully pushed a bill through the state legislature. Verizon's writing legislation? How does that work? This wasn't even our biggest problem because another company's headquartered in Philadelphia named Comcast. They had put a bill on Governor Rendell's desk, proposal drafted by lobbyists for the telecommunications companies. The governor whose bill that was on the desk of is Ed Rendell. He's on the right. Before he was governor, he was mayor of Philadelphia. The gentleman in the middle is named Michael Nutter. He would go on to replace Street and was a longtime council member. But the guy on the left was the real nemesis. This is David Cohen, chief lobbyist for Comcast. Now, David Cohen is to corporate lobbying what Bob Marley is to reggae. He's like, there's no second. The New York Times did a profile of him called Comcast Real Repairman, in which they say he's the most important executive in the whole company. It also says he's probably one of the most savvy corporate political operatives in the history of U.S. business. Philadelphia's most powerful unelected official. I don't even know how you can put those words together. Here we are in our little conference room with our spousal enhanced checkbooks. This is like a 2nd grader challenging Michael Jordan to a game on one-on-one for money. We were pissing in the ocean. We had no chance. Now guess who offers citywide Wi-Fi? That one's easy. AT&T would join this fight. Within 2 years, they would outlaw municipal broadband in over 22 states. They just write it into the books. Just took the power of these local decision makers away from them, all in the interest of the commercial interest, not the citizen. My partnership back in those days invested in telecom equipment, and so we were very interested in the Telecommunications Act of 1996. This was heralded as the most important telecommunications reform in 62 years. The Telecommunications Act of 1996 had 2 goals: to promote competition and to encourage the rapid development of new technologies. In 1996, The top four had 48% market share. 4 or 5 years later, after this heralded legislation, they're up to 85%. That didn't work. Let's check in on the second one. Were they promoting innovation? This is a chart of VC dollars into telecom equipment. This used to be 15% of what VCs did. Within 10 years, it had gone below 1%, and a year later, the MVCA stopped tracking it. This market's gone. There is no more innovation in telecom equipment. How can you possibly have a super important bill signed by and implemented by one of the most heralded presidents in our generation that doesn't just fail? Failing would be things stay the same and you don't accomplish the goal. This did even worse. It created the opposite thing of what it was supposed to go do. Let me introduce you to George Stigler. He's the 1982 Nobel Prize winner in economics and the father of regulatory capture. As a rule, regulation is acquired by the industry and is designed and operated primarily for its benefit. Regulation is the friend of the incumbent. The first thing he says, in regulatory capture, a special interest is prioritized over the general interest of the public. The two mechanisms they usually use is the second bullet, limited market entry and price protection or even price increases. And then the mechanisms of influence are money, made worse by Citizens United, exposure, just time around people, and then 3, revolving doors. This is a piece of Morgan Stanley research from 1999. Someone took the time to go study 5 pieces of major U.S. legislation that had happened over the years and how the incumbent stocks did after the legislation. Conclude that landmark regulatory action has a tendency to improve returns for the largest players in the targeted industry. Long-term investors should consider capitalizing on any temporary weakness caused by market reaction to regulation. Many attempts to increase competition or improve customer experience have failed. This is reinforcing what Stigler taught us. Number of new banks in the U.S., 2009, nothing. Dodd-Frank. That's what happens. Does everyone know who Epic is? It's hard to know because they're not public. It's a very large private company in Wisconsin that is the largest player in medical EHR software, medical records. And this is their CEO, Judith Faulkner. In 2009, Obama put her on his Health IT Council. She was the only corporate representative. Should not surprise you, she's a major donor to Obama. Obama passed the American Recovery Act. That was his big piece of stimulus, kind of like Biden's Inflation Act that happened recently. And tucked underneath that, easy to hide in this big bill, is an act that was, the acronym's high-tech. It's this health information technology thing. And then they created an agency called ONC that oversaw it. This is the part you're not going to believe. They came up with a brilliant idea. I have to assume she helped encourage this. Doctors would receive $44,000 each if they bought software. $38 billion. This is true. You can look it up. Many of you run companies. That'd be pretty cool, right? The government passed a law. If they buy your software, they get money. Make it a lot easier. You may be thinking, are doctors needy? This happened because of the mortgage meltdown. Doctors own multiple homes, so they have multiple mortgages. There's 2 more things about this act that are also unbelievable. First, there's a flaw. If someone said, yeah, I'm going to pay people to buy software, most people would be like, well, you're going to have a problem. They're going to buy it and they're not going to use it, right? Well, they thought of that. So guess what? The second phase, doctors got paid $17,000 more to prove they were using it. It was called meaningful use. Plastered all over the website of all the HR vendors at the time. The ONC decided the threshold of features you would need for your software to comply with this mandate. And I'm assuming they kind of took Epic's feature set and plowed it into this spreadsheet. But they got the Department of Justice to enforce people that didn't have the feature set that were getting the payments. And you had 3 record fines, $155 million, $57 million, $145 million against the lesser competitors of Epic. Unreal. If you've studied the innovator's dilemma, the way startups disrupt is they come in with lower feature products, but a feature that really matters to the customer and a simpler product, and they move up. They put a brick wall there, so you couldn't come up. Obama, in an interview with Ezra Klein, said this was the most disappointing part of Obamacare. I think if any of us were in the room when they scratched this thing out, I could have told them that it would have failed. I mean, paying people to do stuff, it's not going to work. Now, you may ask, am I unhappy with Judith? I'm disgusted with it. But if I were a judge in the Olympic regulatory capture competition, I'm giving her a 10.